Hey everyone, I'm Pastor Jay and welcome to Simple Church Online. Whether you missed last Sunday, you're checking us out for the first time, or maybe even watching out of state, we're so glad that you're a part of our community. And we're praying today that as you watch, God would use this to bless your life. Enjoy the message. We're jumping into our final seventh habit as we end Win the Day. I hope this has been a great series for you. I mean, really prayed a ton about this series. It has been very, very good for me and my family. What I want to do as since it's Youth Sunday, is without looking at any notes or anything like that, is there anyone who can name the 6 previous habits? I got $20 in my pocket. If you think you got it. You can't, I'm sorry, you guys are not eligible. All right, let's go. Sarah, what do you got? Okay. So you said ride the wave. It's the only one that's not exactly right. You can't. There's no helping this. Barb. It's like Wednesday. You're that student. You're that one. I'm just kidding. Hey, B-Dog, will you run that back too? $20 to Miss Sarah. There you go. Give it up. Make sure he actually does it. Great job. So again, if you haven't been through this whole series, that's okay. Each week kind of stands alone, but it's also really good to have all of these in your pocket. And so you can go to our Spotify and listen to everything on there, our YouTube, and check out the rest of these. And so for our final habit today, we're going to focus on the importance of getting outside of ourselves. And it's so fitting that this landed on Youth Sunday. God orchestrated all this. It wasn't something we did. It just kind of worked out this way that Matthew, he had what's families get together? Reunion. There we go. It's this thing, I'm telling you, man. If I had this, I just want to rap. I just want to like, bah, 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 you know what I'm saying? Mitch knows what I'm saying. Anyway, it throws me off. So he's at a family reunion. So it all worked out for the teens to lead today and for us to focus on our last habit, which is seed the clouds. Seed the clouds. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So where does seed the clouds come from? On November 13th, 1946, a plane took off from Schenectady. I knew I was going to struggle with that in county. Why couldn't it be like Tulsa? Anyway, with 6 pounds of dry ice in the plane. Now, why in the world were there 6 pounds of dry ice in the plane? Well, for months before, there was a chemist named Vincent Schaefer, and he'd been conducting experiments at General Electric Research Laboratory. And he had been using a GE Electric Sub-Zero freezer, and he'd been making clouds by just breathing. You know how you do that when it's really cold. And he'd been seeding clouds or putting things into the cloud to try to make rain or snow. And so he tried thing after thing, and he finally one day brought some dry ice. He made a cloud, seeded the cloud with the dry ice, and down came the snow. So a few months later, it was time for the field test. So he took off. Schaefer was in a single prop plane, and he drives into a cumulus cloud and dumped the dry ice. And the eyewitnesses on the ground said the cloud seemed to explode, and they said that you could see snow for 40 miles from that cloud. And so the idea is that I put something into this cloud to produce something that others are impacted by. And this idea of seeding the clouds is not something that's brand new. So what does it mean to seed the clouds? Well, it simply means this: sow today what you want to see tomorrow. Okay, it's the idea of sowing and reaping. It's been around forever, but if we're going to win the day, if we're going to make an impact in this world, if we're going to do more than just exist, more than just make it safely to death, then we have to sow today, do today what we want to see tomorrow. So what does it look like to seed the clouds? Well, we actually have a literal picture of this played out through the prophet Elijah. And so in 1 Kings, there's a famous battle that happens, which we're going to talk about. But a little bit of background. So at this time in Israel's history, they've been split into 2 kingdoms, northern and southern. They have Israel and they have Judah. And at this point in time, King Ahab is king of Israel. And he started out as a believer. His dad, who was part of the Omri dynasty, was a believer, believed in God. But he marries a woman. Does anybody know who King Ahab marries? Jezebel. So if you've ever heard the term of a woman being a Jezebel, which is kind of an older word, this is where it comes from. So Ahab marries Jezebel. She turns him from the God and turns him to Baal, the god of the sun. And because of this, he becomes an evil king. And Elijah, who's the prophet at the time, comes to King Ahab and says, listen, if you don't turn from what you're doing, there's going to be a famine and a drought in the land for 3.5 years. And King Ahab is like, bro, I'm king, whatever, bro. You know, like, I got the riz. I told him I wouldn't say youth words today. I'm cool enough to say, okay, no, I'm not. But King Ahab, he was basically like, listen, you don't know who I am. I got this. So they continue to worship Baal. And sure enough, for 3.5 years, no rain. There's a huge drought. There's a huge famine that happens in the land because they turn their back on God. And so right before 18, Elijah comes back to King Ahab, or when 18 starts, and he says, hey, I'm back, and I want you to know what's going to happen. My God, the real God, Yahweh, is going to bring rain, not your God, Baal. He can't do what my God can do. And so we're going to catch up to the story here in verse 41. And it says, then Elijah said to Ahab, go get something to eat and drink, for I hear a mighty rainstorm coming. Now remember, there's been no rain for 3.5 years. So Ahab went to eat and drink, but Elijah climbed to the top of Mount Carmel, bowed low to the ground, and prayed with his face between his knees. Then he said to his servant, go and look out toward the sea. The servant went and looked, then returned to Elijah and said, I didn't see anything. 7 times Elijah told him to go and look. Finally, the 7th time, his servant told him, I saw a little cloud about the size of a man's hand rising from the sea. And then Elijah shouted, hurry to Ahab and tell him, climb into your chariot and go back home. If you don't hurry, the rain will stop you. Okay, so we have this moment here where Ahab sends this servant to go look. This is why. You see, this is why. I need a page flipper. And this, I love this story because there's so many components to the story and what you could talk about. There's the faith of Elijah. There's the persistence of the servant. There's the power of God. But the reason I start right here in this moment of the story is because I want to look at the beginning of this miracle. I want to see how Elijah prayed and understand why it's important to see the clouds. Go back to verse 42. So Ahab went to eat and drink, but Elijah climbed to the top of Mount Carmel, and listen to this, bowed low to the ground and prayed with his face between his knees. Let me ask you this, when's the last time you've been there? When's the last time you've been face down on the ground, just pleading with God? I remember those moments in my life where it's just like, God, it's almost desperation. So why is that so important? Well, if you go back in 18, you have the real famous story of Elijah and King Ahab. If you know Bible stuff, Elijah when he comes to King Ahab and says, listen, my God's going to make it rain, yours can't, nanny, nanny, boo-boo. Not only does he say that, he says, and to prove it to you, you get your 850 prophets of Baal. 450 prophets of Baal, 400 of your other gods. And you meet me on Mount Carmel. And we're going to get it on. He called them out. Playground, 2 o'clock, be there. Let's make this happen. And so they get up there. And they make this altar, and they have this offering in the middle. And the challenge is, if your God is real, make him burn up this offering that's here in the middle of this altar. Now, who is the god of of King Ahab at this point? Baal. And what is he the god of? Fire, sun, right? If anybody should be able to rain down fire and consume something, it would be the god of fire and sun. And so here the prophets, if you know the story, they start calling on their god, Baal, please do this. And I would suggest go home and read the first part of 18 because it is hilarious. Elijah does not play. They're over there trying to call, and he's like, maybe he's snoozing. Listen, it's Youth Sunday. Maybe he's pooping. That's what he says. Read the text for yourself. Elijah's just getting after him. Just trash talking him. Where's he at? What's he doing? And he says, back away. They try for hours. They're cutting themselves. They're doing everything they can to try to make this. Doesn't happen. Elijah says, step aside. Children, let me show you how this is done. He says, hold on. I know there's not a lot of water right now, but go get water and drench this whole thing. Now do it again. Now do it again. Now do it again until it filled up the trough that was around this altar. And again, go home and read it today, but I love how Scripture is so clear about how powerful our God is. Elijah prays to God, and he sends down fire, and it says it licks up the water. It just consumes everything. And then in true Old Testament fashion, he says, gather everybody together, they're all dead. That's just Old Testament stuff, right? And they kill all the prophets of Baal. So, why is it so important to see that Elijah prayed this way? Because this prayer that he's praying on his knees with his head down is right after that happened. I'm going to be honest with you. If I just got done defeating 850 prophets and talking trash to them, I'm going to be like, hey, yo, God, run that back. You know what you did. Do that again, right? This is where Elijah's different. He embraced every moment as a God moment. So he seeded the clouds with prayer. He didn't say, God, we've done this before. He prayed fervently. He cherished every moment that he had with God. He treated, and I think the reason that the rain came is because he treated that day, that prayer, like it was the first day and the last day of his life. Let me ask you a question. If I were to give you, let's say I had this like magic pot or something. That's probably not a good word for Oklahoma. I had this magic jar, let's say that. I had a magic jar, and it could produce $1 million. And I came to each one of you, and I gave you the $1 million. Would you take it? I think most people would say yes, right? How do you think the next day would be for you? How do you think you would feel walking through the next day? You're probably going to be pretty cheery, pretty jolly. I think you're going to be doing pretty good with $1 million in your pocket, right? Kids are kind of knowing you're like, that's okay, here's $100. Go have fun, kiddo. You're not going to care that much, right? What if the jar could produce $10 million? And today, everyone who leaves gets $10 million. That's not how this works, okay? But imagine that you could. $10 million. How's your day going to be tomorrow? How much is stuff going to bother you? Probably not that much. You're going to be dropping just $1,000. You're going to be like, for those who have seen Dumb and Dumber, you're going to be like when they have all that money and they're just like handing it out just in their full ski stuff. That's going to be us, right? If you had $10 million tomorrow, free and clear, do whatever you want to, how are you going to treat people? You're probably going to be a little bit nicer. Your kids probably aren't going to drive you as crazy. You're probably a little bit nicer to the spouse. You're probably going to go buy them something real nice, right? You're going to plan a vacation for the next day, right? We would go crazy with $10 million. It would take a lot to take me down. If I had $10 million tomorrow, I would still be here, right? I would still, no, I'm just kidding. No, but it would change my outlook on tomorrow. Now, what if I told you, though, you could have that $10 million, but you die tomorrow? How many people would take it? How many people would take it? Probably nobody. So you're telling me that tomorrow is worth more than $10 million. That's what you're telling me. Why don't we treat life like that? Why don't we treat life like every single day is a gift from God? Because my kids drive me crazy? Because the bills came up? Because you name it, I hate my job, blah, 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 right. But are you alive? Are you breathing? Do you have an opportunity to make an impact in anybody today? What if we treated every day like it was a gift from God? How different would that look? How different would life look? And I know this sounds like some pipe dream, and even when I was like, am I going to say it? Because there's days when I wake up and I'm like, I just don't want to do today. Like, I don't, right? Like, I don't feel like getting up and being cheery. I don't feel like getting up, and there's days that I don't want to even talk to people about God. Like, I'm tired. There's stress. Someone left the church. They're upset about this, or, whatever. There are days when I don't feel like being around people. But what if? What if that's what I did with my life? How do we see the clouds? We treat every day as a God-given gift with the opportunity to grow and advance his kingdom. That's literally our job as Christ followers. Our job is to get up every day and look for ways to grow and advance his kingdom. It's a mindset shift. Remember, we're trying to win the day. We're trying to stress less. We're trying to win more. If you don't want to do that, if you just want to arrive safely at death and have no impact in this world, that's fine. This is not what I'm talking about. Just do that. Just coast to death. That's fine for you. But that's not the life of a believer. That's not what we're called to. We're called to make an impact, and it looks different from everybody. You may not be up on stage singing or drumming. You may just be we had greeters up front here doing an amazing job loving on people where they weren't on stage. Are they less important? No, they're making just as much of an impact as someone on stage. So it doesn't matter the bigness of what you do. It matters how you live your life and the focus and the pursuit of your life. As Christ followers, we are called to pursue Christ every day. Taking my cross when? Taking my cross when? Daily, and follow Jesus. And the beautiful thing about that is, it's so funny. Sometimes when we preach these things, it feels like, oh, I'm giving them some like task to-do list that they're going to hate. No, this is freedom. This is what freedom looks like. Remember when Jesus said, whoever wants to find their life has to lose it. So I don't pursue the same things the world does. I don't pursue the 9 to 5. I don't pursue. Listen, those things are important. You have to make money. You have to raise kids. You have to pay your mortgage. All that, yes, absolutely. But that is not who I am. That's not the pursuit. I don't place my faith in that. My job could be gone tomorrow. I could say one thing from the stage, and this building wouldn't exist anymore, right? But my faith in God will always exist. So why don't I get up every day and decide that this is the day the Lord has made? I will rejoice and be glad in it. Man, what a different way to look at life. It's not easy. I'm not saying that like this is easy. Like just wake up and be happy, guys. Like that's not easy. I'm not saying this is easy. I'm saying this is the mindset shift of when we lose our lives and give it to God, we gain that from him. What did he say? Bring to me all you are tired and weary and burdened. Come to me and I will give you rest. How? You give me your burdens, I'll give you mine. Mine are much lighter. Mine are much easier. What are your burdens? Follow me. Pursue me. And what are you taking from me? Everything else. But Jesus, who's going to stress about this if I don't? I will. Who's going to cover? I will. This is not prosperity preaching. You still have to get up. You still have to work. You still have to make money. All that's true. But the pursuit, if the pursuit of our day was to chase after God, it would fundamentally change the way that the church sees God, that people outside of the church see God. Seeding the clouds is exercising our faith by identifying God-honoring, God-sized goals, then creating daily habits to support them. That's what it looks like to see the clouds. What goals do you have? I want my kids to follow and love Jesus. Okay, what habits are we developing? What things are we putting in place to make that happen? I want to be able to give more. I want to be able to spend more time. Okay, what habits are we putting in place to make that happen? Again, I'm not saying this is overnight or this is easy, but this should be the pursuit of every Christ follower is how can I seize God-given opportunities? And if we have no time, if we have no plan, it's not going to happen. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. That's a poster that I used to have up before I grew up and stopped having posters in my office, which I feel like I should get them back. Here's the truth. God does not answer 100% of the prayers you don't pray. We don't achieve 100% of the goals we don't make. If every day all we do is wake up and grind and just get to the next day and just get to the next paycheck. Listen, I get that that's seasons of life that we go through, right? But if that's our only mindset, yeah, we're just going to get to the end of life and be like, what was that? And we're going to miss out on these God-given, God-ordained opportunities in our lives. And I know for some of you today, this is like, Pastor, I don't even know where to start. Like, you don't understand. I'm drowning in debt. My kids are driving. I get that. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Start seeding the clouds with prayer then. God, I need you to move. And you get on your face and you keep praying until the breakthrough comes. God will always show up. God will always do his part. Now, it may look different from what we think it is. You can't not have a job and then complain about not having money, right? You can't complain that your kids aren't acting right, but you don't ever read the Bible to them, right? There's a part that we have to play in this. But start seeding the clouds right now. God, do something amazing. Use me. Start seeding the clouds now. Change this circumstance in my life. See, we have what I love in the book Win the Day, he calls someday disease. Someday. When things are perfect, I'll get around to doing this. When my kids are grown, man, I'll have some time to serve. The truth is, if you don't do it now, you'll never do it. You talk to someone older. Listen, I've got a 16 and a 14-year-old. You're never going to have the right circumstances. There's never like, oh, okay, it was tough at 4 and 5, but when they get to 7 and 8 and they're kind of, they can buckle themselves and stuff, it's going to be easy gliding. No. And then they're like 12, 13, now that's easy. No, then you start arguing about Snapchat and phones, right? And then now 14 and 16 and they're driving and it gets easier. Okay, there's parts that are easier, yeah. But there are parts that are more difficult. There's never going to be a perfect time for you to do whatever that thing you feel like you're called to do is. It's the someday disease. There was a study that was done years back involving people who were 50 years and older. And there was only one question on the survey. If you had your life to live all over again, what would you do differently? And there were 3 major replies that came to surface. Number 1, risk more. Number 2, reflect and rest more. And number 3, do more things that live on after I die. Those are the top 3 things. Nothing about gaining more money. Nothing about, having a bigger house. Again, nothing wrong with those things. Please hear me. But like we get so focused on that being our pursuit. The reason that we exist is just to make money and try to get bigger things and keep up with the Kardashians and all of these things that don't matter. And at the end of our life, we're not going to look back and wish that we had more stuff. I promise you. I'm a couple years away from one of my kids graduating, and I'm already starting to look back. And I'm not like, oh, you know what? I wish we would have bought her 3, My Little Ponies or whatever, right? Like, I'm thinking, God, did I use this time? Did I teach her enough? Did I love? That's the stuff that matters. And as Christ followers, if we could just shift our mindset to that. The other thing that I think that I would add to this list is that I think that if someone were to ask me, what would you do if you lived your life again? And this is something we've been purposeful about, is that I would enjoy every part of the journey. And I want to encourage you, people with young kids, there are times that it's very difficult to enjoy the journey at this age. I've been there, done that. You will miss those moments. And I want to challenge you, and I'm not saying this is going to be easy, but what if you treated every day like it was the last day with your kids? I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying you're always going to get it right, and we certainly did not. But we were very intentional about we have a limited amount of time with our kids, and we're going to invest every second we can in it. Were there times that flew off the handle? Yes. Did they deserve it? Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially my talker backer. Won't tell you which one that is, but you probably know which one that is. You'll miss those moments. I already missed those moments of them crying. I miss those moments of having to play in the same game over and over and over and over and over again. Emma she called herself a checker outer, and she had a store, and you would go through the store, and you'd have to, and it was for hours. And I would say, this shopper right here lays on the bed. That's what he does. And you bring the stuff to him, right? It drove me crazy. Evan, he's a drummer because the amount of energy that he has in his body is insane. Never, nonstop, never stops, ever. And so we played ball, and eventually I'd be on the couch, and he'd just be running across, and I'd just be throwing the ball to him. Just, I mean, it's just, I miss those days. And I love the days that we have now where I'm getting to interact with them as, they're becoming adults, and that's fantastic. You will miss those days. Cherish them. Enjoy every area, every part of life, the good and the bad. We get one shot at this. I almost thought about rapping Eminem's, Lose Yourself, because it's as dumb as it is. It's true. You only get one shot. And I want to make the most of this. And I'll tell you this right now. This next generation needs our generations to see the clouds. They need us to pour into the clouds so that they can see God moving. It's Youth Sunday, so I can't help but talk about phones, guys, and social media. So bear with me, okay? Parents, get off your phones and get off social media and raise your kids. We want to harp on this next generation. I guarantee you my generation and the generation beneath me is worse, if not, it is equal, if not worse, than what the students are dealing with. We got to put our phones down, and we got to raise these kids to love Jesus. This generation, and DJ talked about this at camp, this generation has what it takes to change, to bring revival to this country, because they're serious. They're either in or out. My generation, you could kind of play that game of in or out with Jesus, like I am, but then I got this stuff going on, right? Kind of we are. It's either real or it's not to them. And they are dying to see the generations ahead of them show them who God is. And when we're at home and we're doing the exact same things that the world is, and we're binging out on shows, and we've got our phones, and we're choosing things over church, and we're not showing them, we're not seeding the clouds for God for them. They are desperately looking for the truth. We want to harp on them, and we want to talk about all these things that are going on, and identity crisis. And yeah, sure, there's some issues right now. But I believe if they looked to church people and they saw God's miracles moving in them, that it would probably help a whole lot. This next generation needs to see that. They need to see the miraculous, and God works miracles through ordinary people. That's what he does. He doesn't do crazy things like he did back then. He does it through his people. And if we're not available, and if we're not ready, and if we're not prepared, and if we don't have time, and if we don't have resources to give, we're not going to be ready for those God-given moments when we get to show the miracle of God through our lives. At the end of the story, there's a little part that to me is amazing. And I think that, yes, God doesn't work this way anymore, but he does things like this. He shows himself through us in ways like this. So Elijah, he tells Ahab, get on your chariot, you better go, the rain's coming, right? You got to get out of here. Then look what happens in verse 46. Verse 45, and soon the sky was black with clouds. A heavy wind brought a terrific rainstorm, and Ahab left quickly for Jezreel. Then the Lord gave special strength to Elijah. He tucked his cloak into his belt, and he ran ahead of Ahab's chariot all the way to the entrance of Jezreel. He was the original Flash. This is what God does when we're available, when we see the clouds, when we take our faith serious. Bro was Flash. He got to go. He ran past. Can you imagine Ahab, who was struggling to believe if God was real or not? Sure, he saw him rain fire down. But now all of a sudden you're on your chariot and you're just getting after it, And all of a sudden, dude is just wham, right past you. You think that Ahab wasn't like, okay, something's up with God. And I'm just wondering, what kind of miracles are this next generation going to see in us? If we don't have time, if we're not focused, if we're not seeding the clouds for them, how are they going to know about God? It is our job to show them the miracle of who God is, the miracle of Jesus, like Emma said, coming from heaven to the dirt to walk with us. It is our job to share that story. And we can't do it if all we're focused on is getting the next paycheck and getting to the next sporting event, and all those things are fine. But if that's our focus, we're missing out on seeing the clouds for these young people who need to know God. They don't need to hear how bad they are. They know they are. That's why they're searching for something. You want to know why so many are struggling with identity and who they are and who to love? Because we don't show them who their truth is, who God is. We just yell at them. Sorry. No, not sorry. I'm not saying sorry anymore. I need like an old school towel. That's what I'm talking about. I love. Listen, I was in youth ministry for 15 years, and so I'm glad that I get to be back with them because I have a passion for young people. Because we get stuck, man. Us old people, we get stuck in our ways. We get stuck in the grind of life. And being around these students and seeing them step out of their comfort zone. We had a young lady, and she's easily embarrassed, so I'm not going to say her name, but she is one of my quiet people. I am going to say it. Is Emery even in here? There she is right here. Emery, sorry to pick on you. I know you don't love the spotlight. She learned how to do balloon animals just on YouTube, that devil of a phone of hers, or whatever. Amazing or not, people can actually use it for good things. But anyway, side thing. She learned how to do balloon animals, and she sat over in this corner for hours on Tuesday and Wednesday making balloon animals for little kids. Stepping out of her comfort zone. My 43-year-old self needed to see that. I see God through that. I see God through my kids standing up here and playing, and Emily Kate over here stepping out. She's another quiet one, and this next generation is ready to do something amazing for God. They need our generations to see the clouds form. Now, what does that look like? And I know I'm out of time here. It's different for every household. But I feel like if our focus is on the pursuit of Christ first, if I wake up in the morning and say, this is a God-given day, how can I use it? If I look at my kids driving me crazy and say, these are gifts from God that I have a limited time with, how can I love them well? Now, that doesn't mean don't discipline. Please discipline and get onto your kids. Don't let them be punks, man. Oh, I can't stand that. Anyway, but if I look at them and say, okay, I'm not gonna overreact because this is God-given gift right here. How can I steward it well? If we change that mindset, we're going to win the day. And guess what? We're going to stress less. We're going to be less anxious. If we're focused on God, He's going to take those burdens from us. He's going to give us His burden, which is just to follow Him. And it's going to make life a whole lot easier. I'm not saying your circumstances are going to be easy. That's life, right? Life is tough. We have things that happen. But what it does is it changes our heart. And that's what needs to be changed more than anything else, more than $10 million. If God can change our heart, and if we can start seeding the clouds so that we can leave a legacy for these kids, we're going to be doing okay. Once again, thank you for stopping by today. And we'd love for you to be a part of our family at one of our services at 9 or 11 on Sunday. You can find out all of our information at simplechurchtulsa.com. And we'd love to pray for you any way we can. So please message us, and we hope you have a great week.